All right, I'm doing a sample pricing analysis of this house in Stapleton. I picked it because it's kind of mainstream. It's kind of near my house, so I kind of know it, so it's a little bit easier. But this is how I'm going to go through and figure out what it's worth. It's been in the market for 12 days, so I'm guessing it's overpriced, but we'll see. So I'm going to start a new search. I'm going to pick my area. In this case, it's easy because it's just a zip code. I'm going to pick detached homes. I'm going to pick under contract sold, and the market's moving enough where I'm just going to go back 6 months. I can see I have 247 matches, and in some cases, depending on my area, I might trim this down based on the subject property. But if I do that, I won't end up with those results if I wanted to kind of reference something obscure or something for later, but I'll kind of go into that. So I'm going to get the results page, I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to export. And I've previously set up this export format, sold comps, in MLS so I can kind of get the fields that I care about and not the ones that I don't. So it's going to export, take it over to Excel, and you can see, you have all the field, the columns, everything that got exported, and it's kind of the way it kind of shows up. So I'm going to go, I set up a macro, and a macro in Excel is just a series of commands that you save. So if you look at the format now, you can see things aren't fitting right. There's names of columns, the address is in 5 different fields. So I'm going to run this macro that I've set up as sold comps, and I'm going to run it. And you'll see how it changes by me doing nothing. And even if you skip that, you can format the spreadsheet yourself. But now the address is in one field, the columns are spread out the way I want them to, that kind of thing. So what I'm going to do is start labeling now. Well, first I'm going to find the house I wanted, so 8066. I'm going to find the house that my subject, and I'm going to move it up kind of this section up here, so it's kind of my focus. I'm going to delete the extra column. And then with the macro, there ends up being extra data, so I'm deleting at the bottom. So now I'm going to go through and just start coloring things, and my coloring scheme is basically green is a good match to the subject property, and orange is a bad match, and yellow is kind of a highlight. So if it's still on the market, it's a bad match because I can't use it as a true sold comparable. Sold is good. And under contract is, I value it more if the days on market are low. If the days on market are high, I don't like it as much because I can't really project what the purchase price might be. I use the net sale price to kind of calculate, and there's not many concessions these days, but I copy the ones that don't have a sale price. I copy those over to the net so I can have one column with all the prices in it. And I do highlight those so I know that they're not final prices, it's just a projection. And then I kind of go the next step. I find, I figure out what do I care about? So I'm going to sort on sold date. So now I can kind of figure out where does it start. So if it's sold, let me go down to the bottom. If it's sold in November or December or even January, I'm going to assume it was under contract last year or around Christmas or around something where the market wasn't hot. I still don't really like February because it was still contracts in January. And we'll get more into this as we get closer to trying nailing down the price. So I highlighted those. They aren't bad, but they aren't good either. And then I really like, all of these. Let's just say March let's just say April sale dates are ideal, April and May. Then I'm going to go through and figure out, kind of get rid of the ones that are too big and too small. So I'm going to sit here and take the square feet and multiply it by 1.2, so 20% above, and then 20% below. I'm going to sort on square feet, and then keep the ones that are in this range and get rid of the ones that are not. So 2348. So I'm finding 2348. Okay, there's the cutoff. Fixing the colors. So I'm going to pull these out as too big because they're more than 20%. And I'm going to move them, I'm not going to delete them, I'm going to move them to the bottom just in case I need to come back to something later because I'm not getting enough data. And with this one being in Stapleton, I'm almost positive I'm going to have plenty of data. So it just doesn't hurt to have a spreadsheet too big. Now I'm going to find the lower number, so 1566. 1566. Looks like there's some exact matches in there. And get rid of the ones that are smaller than that. I'm going to copy the headers down here, and I'm going to label it to big or small. Now, as we can look at this one, I can see there's no finished basement. So I'm going to go through and rule out anything that has a finished basement. So all of these. And if I get through this and have nothing left, then I bring these back in. But ideally, I have enough comparables where I don't have to worry about that. So put these down here. Give it a header. And has basement. So now my list is getting much smaller. I also this house does have a basement, so I want to get rid of, houses that don't even have a basement at all. Because having a basement is storage, is something valuable, so not a good match if there's no basement. So these I'm going to get rid of. And I don't value basement square feet as high as above ground. So these are dramatically bigger basements, 50% bigger, kind of in this range. I'm not going to care about that yet. I want to get down to where I can make adjustments and look and things like that. So after all that, label that section, and then I can get, so then I'm narrowing this down. Now these are the top 20% with everything else we kind of eliminated. And now I'm going to kind of keep going. So I'm going to change this to a 10% tolerance, 90% under, and now I'm going to start highlighting. So I use dark green and light green for this kind of thing. So, so I'm going to sort this again based on square feet. $17.61, so there. 2153, 21 there. So that's a light green because it's kind of a match. Then I'm going to go to 5%. And that range is 1859 here to 2055 to here. So the white ones are between 10 and 20%. The light green are 10%, and these are 5%. So now I'm getting narrowed down even more on what's kind of happening. So I'm going to draw out these 10% ones because I'm hoping I can get a value based on those without going to the ones that are between 10 and 20%. So I'll come back, so these are 11 to 20% tolerance of the square feet of the subject house. So now we're getting to a pretty good list here. Now I'm going to sort by price and just kind of get a gauge for where we are. So we have a range from $695 to $499. So I know right away this one's 6 1/4. Like the majority of these, like even at 550, we're kind of at, like these, I think there's no chance they're a match. I don't gauge anyone's competency level enough where I would validly count these. So I'm just going to kind of get rid of these for now. So price too low. Now I'm down to a pretty tight window. I don't like this because it's sold in December. I don't like this one either because it's sold in January. This one is still active, so I'm going to kind of keep it in here just because it's a good reference and it's within 5%. And now we've got a range of 695 to 560, and this is where I'm going to start using the notes. I'm going to go through and look at this one and compare it to the rest. So we'll go, what I'm going to do is now I want to basically get just these into MLS. This is a little trick. Basically you master the keyboard, you comma, delete, end, and you get them all lined up. Search an MLS number, paste them in, and now we just have the short list of comparables. So now once I have them in here, I'm going to look at the location. And looking at Stapleton, most of these comps are above I-70, which I don't like doing, but it's a good reference. So drawing attention to that, and because I know Stapleton, I'm going to look now at build year. This is 2011. These are brand new, so I'm going to orange these to draw attention to them. These are a reasonably good match, so I'll do that. And then looking at this as well, I'm going to draw attention to, this is my subject, this is the one we're looking at. And it's kind of on a busy street. Like if you zoom in far enough, it's the second house in from a pretty busy street. And pretty soon there's going to be a Sprouts and condos and all kinds of retail over here. So I don't like this location very much, but it's still a good reference. Now this one, I'm going to get the address off of 3395 Willow. And I'm going to draw attention to that because its address is a good match, a good approximate match. And although it's very close, this one's a block and a half from a park. This one's sitting on a busy street and commercial. So not a good, but it's definitely not up here where all these are happening. But it's close enough at this point. So this is where I've now got all of the properties into the system. And I'm going to basically just click through these and make sure they're a good match. And one thing I haven't done yet is to make sure they're all the same type. So I do confirm they're all 2 stories, so we can kind of ignore that. Stapleton's pretty consistent. So you have all of these are 3-bed, 3-bath, and the subject is 3-bed, 3-bath. So a pretty good match there. At this point, I'm really just going to go through and look at pictures. I'm not going to do that in the video, but you can just go through and look at pictures. And the goal is to find where this property, according to the agent, would slot in right here. So that price puts it right there. And there's a pretty big gap between 650 and 610. So these should be quite a bit nicer. These should be worse, but not too worse. Maybe the location, you could probably adjust this up because the location is bad. So maybe this really is worth 650 somewhere else. So maybe it should be pretty close to this one to see if it's a good match. Looking at days on market, This one was on the market for 135 days. That's a long time, and it could have been new construction. Sometimes those are skewed, but none of these were selling very fast, but they might have been new construction as well. The other ones were 12, 8, 1 day, 3 days, all the resale ones. So this one's been on the market for 12 days already. So something saying that people don't like the location or something wrong with the house, that kind of thing. And then when I get here, as I look at the pictures and kind of figure that out, does it really match up at 625 in between here, or does it really need to be 610 to kind of compete with these? And that's kind of the next step. But that's it.